Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Hidden Cyber Risk in SAP, Why Conventional SAP Security and Network Security Aren't Enough. This session is brought to you by Security Bridge and KPMG India, and we are delighted to have you join us all as we will share our view on evolving cyber risk in SAP environments and why traditional security measures fall short. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping reminders. This webinar is being recorded and the copy will be shared afterwards. All attendees are on mute to ensure a smooth experience. And if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A chat and we will address them during the dedicated Q&A session at the end. If you want, you can also vote for a question so that we can select the questions with the most amount of votes for discussing at the end as well. For today, we have an exciting lineup of experts sharing their insights with us. To start with Rahul Singhal, partner at KPMG, responsible for the cyber assurance, and he will kick off with a few words as introduction. And after Rahul, Joris van der Vis, the director research at Security Bridge, will take over and tell his view on how SAP vulnerabilities are exploited. After Joris van der Vis, Muthu Kumaran, associate partner at KPMG India, also at the cyber assurance practice. He will tell his view on why conventional SAP security measures are no longer enough. And then to close the webinar, Ivan Mans, the CTO of Security Bridge, will show you a live demonstration in how the Security Bridge platform solve the problem. To start, I would like to invite Rahul Singhal, Head of Cyber Assurance at KPMG India, to set the stage for today's session. Rahul?
Yeah, thank
over
you.
to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope I'm clearly audible and visible as well. So let me start with a few numbers. Hi, very happy to be here. Since this webinar is about SAP and the associated cyber security aspects, so it's only appropriate that I begin with the latest numbers as SAP themselves has said. As per SAP, 84% of global commerce is run by SAP customers. The cloud ERP suite of SAP is growing at a greater pace, greater than 30% year-on-year growth over the last 3 years. More than 30,000 customers have started using SAP Business AI. Now, these are very, very important numbers and give us the context on why SAP Cyber or SAP Security is fundamentally changed from how it was earlier. What you should also look at this is in the context of cyber attacks that have been growing at a very, very fast pace. In fact, I was speaking with one of a leading cybersecurity vendor, and they said that on an average, it used to take about 50 days for an attacker to weaponize a vulnerability after it gets identified. Now with AI, it takes only a matter of hours. Now, given that the whole world, almost majority of Fortune 500 or large enterprises are using SAP, and given that AI has taken world by the storm and the number of cyber attacks are going through the roof, we have to clearly look at or relook at how we consider SAP security historically. I will also give you some other perspectives. What has also happened is that a huge number of client base or of SAP has now moved to the cloud. It is no longer a system which is within the boundary walls of the enterprise. Now, what that brings a large number of variables which are strictly not in an enterprise's control, and security needs to address that. What you also need to understand is that the SAP focused malware is increasing significantly. What is also happening is that the SAP environments, the deployed SAP environments are increasingly becoming hybrid, more and more hybrid. whether it is connectivity with non-SAP systems, whether it is connectivity with IoT devices, IoT systems. There are a lot of interfaces which require data to be moving from from other systems to SAP and vice versa. Now, given all of these aspects and the perspective of cyber, some of these security-related, questions are significantly important. I will also give you two other things before which I, hand it over to the next presenter, which are some of the things. If you have been since I'm a cybersecurity consultant, I look at the SAP's security notes, which SAP publishes fairly regularly, every month. If you at least have seen the security notes which SAP has published in January and in February, the large a significant number, or some of those security notes pertain to critical vulnerabilities which need to be patched. And if you see over a period of time, the number of security nodes have remained fairly consistent. A lot of critical vulnerabilities SAP themselves have asked customers to patch. So if you do not have a good patching, cycle in place, you are clearly in trouble. And my last point, as an introduction, is what we must also be aware is that when enterprises are thriving, they thrive typically in an environment which with a lot of regulatory aspects also thrown in. So if you look at the regulators, and let me take the US regulator as an example. The US regulator now requires companies to disclose any material cybersecurity breach, within 4 days, right? And that is a very short number. And when the regulators of auditors come, which is the PCOB, to audit documentation, if a cyber incident has happened, right, they clearly need to demonstrate that those incidents haven't impacted the crown jewel or the financial reporting. And SAP, being SAP, in wherever SAP is deployed, is definitely one of the crown jewel systems of the customer. So if things go bad in SAP, then customers are in deep trouble. Given all these aspects, it is very important that we look at how do we address the cyber risks in SAP, and can our historical approaches that we have taken are good enough, given the perspectives that I just shared. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul, for the introduction. Let me take over from here. My name is Joris van der Vis, and I'm happy to be here in my current role as Director of Security Research. In this role, I'm happy to share that we reported quite a lot of significant amount of zero-day vulnerabilities to SAP to help customers better protect themselves. And again, I'm happy to share some experiences with you in the area of SAP cybersecurity and why a specific last line of defense for SAP is needed. Maybe good to start with the why, because we often get these questions. Why is SAP security needed? Why do we need to invest additionally for SAP specifically? And I think it's fair to say that SAP is quite critical for most organizations. It's not a secret that SAP systems, they typically hold business critical data and they support your mission critical processes. And when those systems go down, or if they fall victim to example given ransomware, it can have quite a crippling effect on your business. That combined with an increase in risk, since nowadays there are quite a few SAP systems connected to the internet. Many customers use internet-based scenarios for integration with partners or vendors. And that combined with an increase in cybercrime, all that combined is definitely an indication that you might want to take your SAP security to a higher level. And on top of that, we see more and more pressure also from compliancy regulations. So yeah, there is SAP systems, again, they typically hold your business crown jewels. So But there are some specifics to SAP systems. They're not your typical web application. They're often quite more complex, and we see they're also often separated from, let's say, your generic security teams or the rest of your IT landscape. And this is because SAP systems use their own very specific protocols and technologies, and therefore are in most cases not protected by the typical security solutions as they are deployed. And that is because these typical solutions, like antivirus, or you can think of firewalls, they don't speak Japanese, as we call it, which means that they don't understand what is really happening inside this SAP application. And therefore, SAP in many organizations is a blind spot or a black box. It's also really common to learn that corporate networks are or can be breached quite easily. I think we all see that in the news every day, for example, because of malicious organizations that lure people into clicking on links sent by phishing emails. And once a network is breached, it's often a small step towards your SAP systems. We quite often do penetration tests as well. And in our experience, we see that SAP systems of customers that do not take additional measures are quite easily breached. So SAP systems being a blind spot, combined with the complexity of those systems, really show that there is a need for a specific SAP last line of defense to protect those systems. To make things a bit more tangible, we have provided some examples here of SAP cybersecurity vulnerabilities. In this case, in the area of configuration or security and compliance or hardening, if you'd like to call. And most of them are really, again, on the SAP application layer. And we do encounter those vulnerabilities over and over again at customers. And most of the above ones do lead to a breached SAP system or are used in post-exploitation scenarios where they are used to, for example, move from one system to another system or do privilege escalation. And even though this is an arbitrary top 10, we have dozens of checks that are all checking for these blind spots. But this top 10 is, I think, a good example of often observed misconfigurations. We do check for all of those. Again, these are in the area of hardening or vulnerability management, if you'd like to call. We also have quite some examples in the area of threat detection. And again, these are typically missed by traditional solutions. So your typical antivirus or firewall or other generic solutions or even SAP solutions like GRC will not detect this. Again, SAP in most organizations is a black box. And I will not go over these examples one by one, but I think people from the SAP world will recognize them. And again, most of them can lead to a breached SAP system or are used in post-exploitation examples. Similarly, we have a few examples in the area of code vulnerabilities. This is also an often missed, let's say, area in SAP security. I think there is no SAP customer that does not have custom code in their SAP systems. We all have that. And the thing is that these are often overlooked, or the risk is ignored, or they're not being picked up by audits, for example. But there can definitely be vulnerabilities in your custom code. For example, there's ABAP code injection, operating system command injection, or SQL injection. Quite dangerous statements that you can build that might lead to an exposed SAP system. We can detect those. vulnerabilities. Ivan will show you in a live demo how that looks and what the strength of the platform is and how to really break that black box principle and really gain insight and have that application layer being opened up. But before demonstrating that, I'd like to show you two demos of some real life exploits that we actually also use in our own penetration testing and that are typical to the SAP world and that will not be detected again by antivirus or firewalls or those typical generic IT solutions. The first one that I'd like to show is about RFC hopping, and we have created a video for that to demonstrate it. What we will do in the demo, and it should start, yeah, there we go. So in this example, we will jump from a system called AED to another system, AEQ. This is standard SAP functionality. It's really child's play, but what we do, we exploit a dialog user that is put in an RFC connection with SAP all. And this happens all the time. It's a really easy yet dangerous attack, since you may move lateral through the SAP landscape and jump, for example, from a non-production to a production system, bypassing a lot of checks and balances. And again, I agree, this is not a technically complex exploit or technique. It is really powerful and really often existing in customers' SAP systems. It's again a blind spot for typical solutions, but you might want to check this and prevent this, because jumping from low security zones to high security zones is a big risk, because you might end up in a productive system containing all the productive data. The second video is an exploit. It's rather old, it's 5 years old, in the area of the SAP Java stack. And what it does, it creates an admin account. This is a publicly known exploit. It's downloadable. You can find it on GitHub. If you just search for SAP Recon exploit, you can find it. The thing is, it allows you to remotely create an administrative account without any form of authentication. You can just send a request, the user is created, and as you can see, you can log on with the password that you provided yourself in the exploit. And it will allow you to log on to the Java stack, again, with administrative privileges. We just recently did a penetration test just to show you that this is, even though this is a 5-year-old exploit, it still exists. For example, and if you run a solution manager, you might want to double check with your team, because quite often the solution manager also have a Java stack. And this is a technical system. It's not a business system. So quite often it's neglected or forgotten with patch rounds. So also for this pen test, we found a solution manager where it was a Java stack that was not patched. We gained access to this Java system. Quite often it's connected to the ABAP stack, because the UME, the user store of the Java engine, is in ABAP. You can also log on to ABAP systems then, and from there completely breach the SAP landscape. So really make sure to patch your systems. Again, this is not detected by typical common generic IT solutions. Again, underlining the need for a specific last line of defense for SAP. So to summarize this part before I hand over to Muthu, we see that the world is changing from an audit perspective. Cybercrime is increasing, and I'm not here to spread any fear, uncertainty, or doubt, the typical FUD. It's just a fact, and SAP customers are a target. Your SAP systems contain valuable information, so make sure that you invest in the security of your SAP systems. Again, your investments in generic security are important, but not doing anything for your SAP landscape. So it's really important to also address that specific area and have a strong security and a last line of defense for your SAP systems. We can help you with that together with partners like KPMG. Be for going to the demo part of Ivan, I think we first have Mutu. Thanks.
Thank you, Horace. And both Horace and Rahul, you have set up the context really well, actually. So let me let me talk about the life of a security administrator, SAP security administrator in specific before 10 years, right? It's SU01, PFCG, and a couple of other transaction codes through which we manage our SAP thing, SAP authorizations and whatnot. Now, what I've seen in the last 10 years is that, I worked in a couple of big implementations of SAP where I have seen in my eyes where SAP landscape has been changing, actually. To put it very specifically, I have seen the hosting of SAP change from on-premise to the cloud, actually. And I've seen a lot of SaaS solutions coming up in SAP, and there is a lot of other interfaces which started coming up in SAP as well. And one other common thing which came up in SAP is the user experience. Actually, SAP came up with Fiori and started pushing SAP to be accessed from the mobile devices of the end user. So all these things, brings up an interesting question. The cybersecurity, now that you have taken your crown jewel and put it out in the middle of the internet, is it right for us to see the SAP system the same way before 10 years, 12 years? And that's where these cybersecurity questions are very important, actually, where, are SAP systems currently being targeted? Any system out there is being targeted. Let's be clear on that. Now, with SAP as a target system, it's even more, an interesting target for the hackers because of the crown jewel data it holds, actually. Do we have any cybersecurity framework? Then again, I'll borrow something said by Horace. SAP security or SAP system in general is a black box. Nobody knows what's going on within SAP box except the basis administrator and except the maybe the security administrator. And these boxes are hosted in a on-premise data center, and I used to say that in the basement of a customer place, actually. Now things are changing. Do we need a framework? Now, enterprise applications in general will be having a cybersecurity framework, but since SAP has been following a siloed approach, no matter who the customer is, that framework is no longer applicable or not applicable for SAP. So it brings back the question, is the traditional SU01s and PFCGs and maybe SODs, is that enough for effectively securing the SAP system? Is the clients are even aware of the potential threats to the SAP? Right, some of these configurations, some of these vulnerabilities, some of these system checks are well documented, right? Even before the ChatGPT days, we know some of these default passwords, default configurations, which remain, open in the productive system. Now with ChatGPT is just a click away. So all these things, brings the importance of cybersecurity. And one key thing I want to talk about is the incident management, manage, detect, and response in the SAP system. And is SAP system is connected to your modern day enterprise SIM solution or a SOC? Now, SIM and SOC in any enterprise will be monitoring any of their systems except the SAP system. Now, so I just want to highlight that these are the cybersecurity questions which we really need to answer. Yeah. Now, what we have done traditionally, now I've highlighted it a little bit. So we have done PFCG, we've done SU01. Allow me to use the transaction codes because the majority of the crowd is SAP crowd. So SU01, PFCG, and then around 2005, maybe, the popularity of single sign-on got picked up. And then the importance of SOD came into existence, actually. And 2005 onwards, the moment you say security, it's the system security, which comes default with the SAP system, and probably the SAP GRC access control system. And for a more regulated customers, then probably we are talking about process control, where you do a little bit of control monitoring, control testing, etc., and then risk management and other things. Now, are these going away? Are these no longer required in SAP system? No, that's not true, right? All these things are still required. The traditional PFCG, role building, and with new flavors of SAP, different architecture of security has came up. All these things are important. in building the roles and managing the application access effectively, and also the SOD part. So we are not saying that none of these are important. Actually, all these are important, but we need to add an additional dimension of cybersecurity because of the way SAP operates today, because of the interfaces it has to the outside world, because of the the rest, the place it resides now. Because of all these things, we need to start seeing SAP beyond PFCG and SU01. Yeah. So these are some of the things which we have seen in the changing SAP landscape. We know S4 came up, and then we know there is a lot of business services came up. There is a PaaS, platform as a solution, and SaaS. You have success factors, you have Ariba, you have Concur, Fieldglass, whatnot, right? And the base hosting of SAP itself has changed. Actually, now a lot of SAP workloads have moved into the cloud solutions actually now. And every other side you turn around, there is a discussion on SAP Rise, and there is a deadline for customers to move from the older version of SAP to the newer version of S4 HANA. So there is a deadline. So there is a lot of transformation happening, and the customers are making use of this opportunity to bring their SAP systems out onto the cloud. And with all these SaaS products and other interfaces, actually the SAP landscape, what you typically see 10 years back, 3-tier landscape, dev, quality, production, is no longer the same. Actually, you have a wide range of SAP solutions, plus you have user experience, Fiori. Initially, when Fiori started, it was for approval purposes. Actually, it will push the screen to the mobile devices where you can approve. But what I've seen in some customers is that nowadays, even the master data transactions or some of the transactional data transactions are taken into the mobile devices. While it increases the flexibility for the end users, but it also puts the responsibility back to the security guys to protect these SAP system. And again, all these things, all these known configuration mistakes or vulnerability errors are well documented, and nowadays it's just a chat GPT away, right? So that's where the change of SAP landscape has evolved. And we are today, the modern SAP system has so many interfaces to the outside world, and also hosted in a different platform. So that brings us to the interesting question. So should we start seeing SAP in a different way, right? So that's where we need to understand the impact of the cybersecurity, in both the infrastructure level as well as the application level. Now, infrastructure level, the perimeter security, operating system security, network security is typically taken care always, right? Now, what is the point in having the front door tightly closed and leave the back door open? Now, all you need is one open configuration or one open vulnerability which can be exploited. Say, for example, Horace mentioned about jumping from a low security system to a high security system. How many of us seen a dormant RFC connection sitting in the production box or in the non-production box, without being used? And we all know that all these RFC connections are, given a user privilege of SAP all. That's a different topic, different day. Always being given with an SAP all. So with all these things, all we are trying to say is, with an accelerating cloud adoption, SaaS usage, and the user experience, the exposure of an SAP system or the attack surface of the SAP system, what it used to be before 10 years is completely different from what is the reality today. And being a crown jewel target, there is all the possibility for the hackers to target these systems. And we just wanted to make sure the customers are aware about the evolving changes. With that evolving changes, the security, the way the security is being looked at should be evolving as well. That's where we bring in the importance of SAP cybersecurity to the transformation or to the migration and all the other kind of SAP installations. Now, coming to the SAP cybersecurity answers, or some of the questions we asked in the previous slide, all these questions, the cyber attacks or examples of cyber attacks, is traditional SAP security is enough or not, is answered in this slide, right? Now, I just want to highlight one simple point actually. How long does it take a patch of a known SAP security vulnerability, for SAP to come out with a patch? The life cycle of this is a typical 280 days approximately. So if a 0-day vulnerability comes out, it takes quite a lot of time for SAP to come out with a patch. Now, added to this, what is the possibility that the customers will deploy these patches immediately? Or to be very honest, what patches to apply is one of the key challenges in majority of the customers. So this actually gives a very big window for the hackers to come into and attack the SAP systems actually. And that's where we are trying to bring all the good practices of the existing cybersecurity world into the world of SAP. Now, you might have heard about vulnerability assessment. You might have heard about penetration testing, maybe SAST, static analysis of code, and DAST, and all these terms used in the cybersecurity world. What we have essentially doing is that bring those domains of cybersecurity, if I may say that, bring those good things from cybersecurity into the SAP world and start applying it on top of SAP system or SAP application so that it can be secured in a much better way. Yeah. So that brings us to the next slide, which is SAP cybersecurity. What are the key things which is being currently focused on SAP cybersecurity? Now, next slide, please. Yeah. So as I said, what we started doing is that we started doing vulnerability assessment of the SAP system or the application layer level. These vulnerabilities, typically it covers the configuration errors, security configuration parameters, and some of the product bugs actually. And some examples are already shown by Horace in his slide actually. And then comes how do you manage those vulnerabilities? And there is a separate topic of, that's where the MDR aspect of the cybersecurity comes in, where how do you, now that you know there is a vulnerability exists in your system, how do you effectively manage the vulnerabilities actually? Then comes threat management. Some of the use cases shared by Horace is very, very common things which we see in SAP world, right? The table debug access or the system debug access or the SAP all assign. See, through the manual controls, we monitor those, but we always monitor in a periodic way, and we doesn't get to know about these threats, because in the new environment, these are all threats actually, with these threat management aspect, we can actually get to know about these threats in real time, in less than, whatever the time frame we define. And top of it, add penetration testing to your SAP application layer, your gateway, and other components like router actually. Now, custom code scanning, knowingly or unknowingly, you can embed. One of the common things I've seen in my experience is embedding the username and password because it's easier during testing. And most of the times it will be missed when the code is getting moved from the quality system to a production system. Then comes patch management. This will help us to review the existing patches, which is outstanding for the SAP system, and let us know how to prioritize. Then comes my favorite last topic, SIM integration. Now, SIM, it's a incident and event management system. You might have heard about Splunk, QRadar, and everything. Now, SAP system has never been part of SIM, right? SIM is used for monitoring all your enterprise applications and infrastructure. Now, SAP, is independent, never been part of it. But this cybersecurity aspect bridges the gap, and tools like Security Bridge will bring in an intelligence layer in between, where it actually passes the real threats. Say, for example, the use cases what you define in the threat management module. When there is a violation of, or when there is a threat, a possible threat, say for example, SAP all being assigned to a user knowingly or unknowingly, it can be identified as a threat in real time and goes back to the SIM system in real time, and with an out-of-box integration, which will get monitored in your SOC. And majority of the CISOs and majority of the CXOs, they don't want SAP to be treated as a black box anymore. They want SAP to be seen as an enterprise application, to be monitored as one of the enterprise application. In fact, with even more importance, because it's a crown jewel. So this is the context I want to set. Now, I just wanted to walk you through my experience of how it is being a security administrator on PFCG SU01 days and how it got evolved. And that's what, that's where we wanted to do this enablement session, actually. With this, I will pass on to Ivan so that he can walk us through the demo, how some of these things are achieved using the security bridge tool. Ivan, all yours.
Perfect. Muthu, many thanks for, I couldn't wish for any option. Now, meanwhile, we shuffling screens a bit so that we can actually go into a view where we go from slideware into software. Now, everyone should meanwhile see a Fiori Launchpad. Now, I had the honors to be invited to this session to showcase in just a few minutes, because normally it does take about an hour and a half to really talk us through the platform. Today, I will try to do it within 20 minutes. I do invite everyone to, I've seen already a few questions popping up in the Q&A panel. But again, just a quick reminder, in case you do have any questions, feel free to put them in. We will try to answer them either as we go or towards the end of the session. Good. Now, what you see in front of you is a demo box, first and foremost, but it's a security bridge in the flesh. As you can see, it looks and breathes like SAP because it is built in SAP. Now, I'm going to talk you through the main capabilities of the platform, and we always tend to say it is a holistic platform that will help you to build an SAP security program. Everything that the gentleman before me actually spoke about, hardening of your system, making your systems compliant against maybe industry standards, monitoring of your systems, monitoring of your code base, all of these elements you will see available as capabilities in the platform. Now, allow me to quickly talk a little bit about the scope of Security Bridge. Now, Security Bridge monitors and hardens and helps you to secure the entire SAP technology stack. And I quickly browsed into what we call a global settings app. So there is one application, it's a Fiori application, from where you can do all the configuration that deals with the entire platform across all different disciplines. And in our test environment here, we can see we have about 52 environments. They are ranging from ABAP systems, Java systems, also technical components like cloud connectors, web dispatchers, SAP routers, we also see some Java agents here. I think there is a BO agent, there is a SAP Concur connected, there is a SuccessFactor connected, BTP. So the scope is really to monitor the entire SAP technology stack. And the connectivity is actually quite straightforward. We do not want to bring a burden to SAP teams to spend a lot of effort in installing the platform and running and operating the platform. Everything is quite smooth. Important to know, Security Bridge comes entirely pre-configured. It does have a number of security baselines. There are baselines from SAP, which are actually quite good. But and I'm here showing you the Security Bridge standard, which if you would follow this baseline, it would almost bring you to ultimate security, which would be, at least for many customers, quite a bit of a roadmap. But you will see there are also some very easy wins. Now, to also quickly pick in on what Joris said, security is something continuous. It's not just a project that you need to take off and run. No, security is something continuous because also the research team, and the guys that are extremely active, and every time they identify a new vulnerability, you as a customer probably want to be aware. And for this, we have also the Security Bridge Cloud, which allows you to not only consume a software update, but as soon as there is a new vulnerability out there in the space, you will be able to receive an automated update. You will be aware of it, and the solution will automatically update its own detection signatures. Now, so much the technicalities. As soon as you have connected all your systems, and the question there very often is, do we only monitor production boxes? The answer is no. I think the example was also given by Joris. If we see someone performing a lateral movement, a lot of SAP breaches, they may start in a non-production system. So it is key to monitor everything from a sandbox to eventually also your production system. Now, I will walk you through the 4 main capabilities, and we're going to start off with patch management, which very likely is the easiest way to help harden your systems. Now, within patch management, and I can already hear you, there's a lot of things that you can also do within SAP standard, and that is absolutely true. SAP standard tooling is good. What Security Bridge does, it just makes it a lot easier. It will save you quite a bit of time. And again, I want to emphasize on this holistic approach. Because if there is a patch missing in your systems, you may also want to make sure that your threat detection engine is listening for it, and that the information that flows to your SIM environment is also aware of this. So in patch management, I'll quickly do an update. Update can also run fully automatically. It does quickly connect to our Security Bridge clouds in case there would be a new vulnerability that we would have identified, something that would happen in the ecosystem of SAP, it would automatically be updated. If we then have a view on our landscape, and we run quite a bit of systems, and I just take a random system here as an example, here we can directly see this system, A1, it's a development box in this case, and we can see it is missing 2 hot news nodes. Hot news means there is a CVSS rating above 9, which makes that node very critical. And we can see they are absolutely missing. Now, important here is, focus on the low-hanging fruits. Patching is very likely the easiest thing that you could do. Now, this node, we know it is relevant because we only show relevant nodes, but there may also be other systems in your landscape where that node is relevant. So it's really important to very quickly assess, as soon as a node is being released by SAP, which of your systems would need to be patched. And also when it comes to patching, there is an option to create an incident, maybe report that to SAP or to your service provider, or in case you would have the authorization yourself, you can also apply the node directly from within the tooling. Now, imagine I would not have the node implemented. This way Security Bridge comes in with what we call virtual patching. Virtual patching means once a node is not there, the threat detection capability, which we will just see in a few minutes, is aware that the node is not there, and it will listen for a potential exploit of that unpatched vulnerability. So first one, we say node is not implemented. We know exactly which systems are affected, but virtual patching is aware that we need to monitor, in this case, the use of critical remote function calls. And so there is a hand-on-hand linkage between your patching and your monitoring, which is really, really key. Now, imagine you would have patched all of your systems already, which would be amazing if you could do that. The second step would be to validate your systems against an industry baseline. Now, you could also map that against a security framework, etc. But we are here using a Security Bridge standard baseline, and the baseline describes what is the best practice setting for your configuration, for your authorization handling, for your system integration settings. And I'm going to take the same system here. As soon as I click on the system, I get to see a security rating. We see here this system is rated 2 out of 5 stars, which is not brilliant. Now, the trend is also a flat line, and it's a demo box. We're not doing any hardening on the box. Typically, we would see customers applying security hardening. They would see a positive trend line. Their security posture improves step by step. Now, on the right-hand side, we can see the various disciplines that we have in SAP, or the areas of responsibility. Security is not just a silo task. It is a cooperation between your rules and authorizations team, between your SAP basis team or your service provider, your development team, your integration team, etc., etc. So all of the checks and controls that Security Bridge comes with is directly linked to an area of responsibility, because it's not only about identifying the issues. Security Bridge will also provide a lot of guidance in making sure that you know how to mitigate, remediate, and entirely fix an issue. I'm just going to walk you through one single example, and I'll take the very first one. I think probably everyone in today's webinar can easily relate to, and these are critical authorization assignments. We can already see in this box, because it's a demo box, we have a 100% accepted risk. Now, risk acceptance is also something that plays a very crucial role. because if you're aware of a vulnerability, but for whatever reason you can't deal with it, or you can't deal with it immediately, you may already want to document it. If we have a look at a single control, I click here, I directly get to see, indeed, this box has a lot of SAP all assignments, 118. If I would open it, I get to see all the underlying users. And, for instance, this may be a solution where I could go into accepting either the risk or deprovisioning the users. Also important, trend analysis. If you take the efforts of going into an SAP security program, you may want to showcase that you're also improving your SAP security posture. So here we can see the green line is the number of users. The orange line is my actual number of critical authorization. And you can see there's a few bumps here. And a bump means, either users got provisioned, and here we can see users got deprovisioned. The orange line should always be below your green line, else your attack surface is really exploding. If we keep on scrolling down, and this is really where we come to a holistic solution, because the checks that we see on the top, they are executed using, they could be executed weekly, monthly, daily, as you want. And I think it was Muti mentioning it. Security is also an element that needs to be real time or nearly real time. And these are events that we've seen that directly correlate to the control that we've seen on the top. Now, take a simple example. There was a cover-up. We can see, and this is coming from the threat detection engine, which we're going to look at in a minute. A cover-up means an authorization was assigned for a very short period in time. And indeed, we can see that here. SAP all was assigned by a user for the period of 21 seconds, which is really odd. Why would that be? So that's the reason we generate an alert. Now, if I would work through all of these controls, and you can see there is quite a bit of red here. Now, whether you're hardening and securing an ABAP instance or an S4 system or a BTP environment, it's all very similar. At the end, our controls will have a recommendation, and you would have to work towards the recommendation that you have set. Clearly, you can build your own controls. You can adjust these recommendations because they all come from the baseline. But the target is to really grow your security posture by focusing on these low-hanging fruits first. And for that, there is a roadmap. If I would have to harden, let's now only harden a production environment. If I would have to harden production systems, it would now give me my ideal roadmap, looking at what is the total effort involved versus what is the complexity that we're going to see with implementing some of these recommendations. This will compile me a step list, and if I just go from the top up towards the bottom, I will see that I gradually increase my security posture. Now, some of these controls will be very easy ones. Some of them will mean quite a bit of work. Good. Now, so this application, it helps you to very quickly get a view on what is the overall security rating of all your systems. You can do benchmarking, you can even do industry benchmarking. And again, it focuses on all the different technology stacks. Moving on to the next capability, and this is actually a very, very powerful one. Even though you may not be running, a SIM environment already. I think it was again Mutu mentioning it. SIM, so security information and event management systems, they're typically being used in organizations to monitor endpoints, routers, firewalls, machines, and all kind of logs. But very often, the most important application in the enterprise, SAP, is often missed there. And it is also complicated to onboard SAP into SIM environments because of the complexity of SAP systems. There's so many log sources, and even though you would onboard your raw logs into your SIM, you would still need to know what you're listening for, what you're looking for. So it's really finding that needle in the haystack. And that's exactly what we have converted into. It has been our bread and butter for the last 12, 13 years. It's also what we are called security bridge, bridging application security, SAP application security with ID security. Good. Now, in the last 1 hour, or maybe let's say in the last 24 hours, if we scan through our own landscape, which is about more than 50 systems, we can see there is one very high severity alert. Now, this alert is being identified. It was identified already real time. And we've got 9,000 alerts, which may be security relevant, not necessarily security critical. And there's also a difference. All of these alerts that we will see, they have already been sent to our SIM environment. And we are supporting and running multiple SIMs in parallel internally here. We use, I think we use Splunk, we use Sentinel, we use Curator, and there's a few more. So there's a wide range of SIMs that we support out of the box. All of these alerts come from raw log sources, and many people may know the security audit log, but there's many more. You got your HANA audit log, your gateway logging. There's so many. I think it's about 20 different data sources and Security Bridge really assesses them in real time. And all of these use cases, they come predefined. There's way more than 1,000 use cases, meanwhile, that are not just going into a log to do pattern recognition. I think that would be way too easy. What Security Bridge does, it does inter-log correlation. It takes logs, it puts them together and really correlates and builds and converts very often a very technical message into something that an IT security audience would really understand. Now, I'll take an example here. That was the high severity alert that we've just seen. There was an authorization check bypassed or potentially bypassed. And I think this one comes from, and we can already see it here, there was a program flow change in the program. A developer went from line 93 to line 107 in the debugger. In the debugging, they were debugging in the context of even another user. So this is looking at source code. This is looking at your audit log to identify debugging sessions, and also performing a flow analysis to really identify they bypassed an authorization check. So this is not something that you would be able to identify by just purely looking at logs, that you really need to have that intercorrelation. Now, it's an event that does not happen frequently. A lot of these events, and this is really a game against false positives, because security fatigue in monitoring SAP systems can very quickly be established. So it's very important to always make sure that you raise actionable alerts. And we can see it's a very high severity alert. You would see that Security Bridge also performs user behavior analytics. It knows exactly what's the business profile of someone in the organization. We know the user ID, but we also see that that user is actually a super user. So super user, it would know that because that user probably has SAP all assigned to it. In a normal situation, if it would not have been a test box, we would see the actual business function. That would also be derived from, let's say, SAP GRC. Now, the fact that an authorization was bypassed, if we then go into the timeline, there's also what makes the tool very, very powerful. It intercorrelates with other events in the same system or even other systems. So you get to see all data that belongs to a particular alert, even up to the raw data. Now, all of these alerts, again, they are being identified in real time. All of these alerts would have been directly sent to our SIM system. Now, if I just also include quickly the high alerts, we'll probably get a few more examples on this test box. And now really scanning for 24 hours across more than 50 boxes, we can see we got 1,200 alerts. Let's do a quick aggregation, and you can directly see the vast majority of alerts actually comes from the login events of critical users. Now, what is a critical user? One more example, Security Bridge would know. It looks at the rules assigned, but it will also look at, are those rules effectively being used? And I think it was also, again, Mutu saying, we see lots of customers having highly privileged interface users. So that is a criticality by itself, but it does not necessarily mean an immediate security threat. We can directly see that here, a critical RFC logons. That would move us into the interface manager. There's another application within the platform. There we would directly see which of the users are causing this. And then we would also have the necessary tooling to help you to remove critical authorization from interface users. So it's not only about identification. The last capability that I would like to quickly talk about in this short demo is code vulnerability. Code is a very important attack vector in SAP. And that's also the reason why also SAP releases security nodes every single month at SAP Patch Day. And SAP does a brilliant job in securing its own code base, but for yourself, no one is going to help you with your custom code. And so Security Bridge therefore also monitors your code base both in real time, and it also provides a tool set for developers to use to write better code. So we also integrate within the development IDEs. Now we see here, there's a box, again, the same system here. We can see we have 0.18% of high vulnerabilities. Actually that's quite good. We see most customers rating way higher, but it would also be reflected on our security compliance dashboard. So even these KPIs, they are measured and they will be visible in our dashboard. If I click on a vulnerability, I get to see the underlying source code. I would see a recommendation. Even if I would not be able to read code myself, there is an AI integration that will help you to explain it. It also maps you to when was the first time that we've identified this. So it again links to the event monitor. So all of these applications actually quite well integrate all together, and they really calculate up to your eventual security posture across your entire SAP technology stack. Right? All of the apps that I've just shown, and I've only shown you 4 of them, they all create KPIs and they have lots of data points. And Security Bridge has a management dashboard through which you can configure. For instance, if I would be a CISO, I'll take a sample dashboard here. You may want to see, I want to keep a very close eye on which are my best systems, my worst systems, how many security incidents have been raised, how many code vulnerabilities do I have, how many patches are missing, or just benchmark your systems, maybe against the different teams that you have, against the industry standards, the industry average that we see. So this gives you an extremely powerful overview of where you are with your security rating on SAP. Now, that said, keeping a very close eye on the clock, we may also want to see some questions in the Q&A session. So I'm definitely open to answer some of the questions. Ono, did you see any question in particular that you would like to see answered?
Yeah, I think it's good to go to the one from Vincent. Do you replicate the SE logs in your own database? If not, how do you correlate the different log types?
I think that's a very good question. So do we replicate? The answer is join, so which is yes and no. First and foremost, the answer is no. The reason we're not just replicating. As you can see, we run in our global settings app, we run about 50 systems. Now, many of those systems will be very large systems, and Security Bridge has a nearly to zero footprint, which means that if we would have to replicate all of these logs onto a central source, it would build a massive database, which would be very, very difficult to handle. You would need additional hardware. What we do is we use the power of distributed system. Every system itself runs what we call an intrusion detection system that monitors the local logs. Web dispatcher, SAP router, HANA, all of the different technology stacks, they will have their own log sources. We keep them local, but as soon as we see there is an event that is security critical, we do take a snapshot of the raw data. And so if we would go into the event monitor, and we'll take a quick example here. So there's a critical RFC login from an external user. I don't know what this is, doesn't matter. Click on details. You will see there is raw data. There's a raw data tab. So for alerts that are security relevant, we take a snapshot. So even if data would be destroyed, we would still have it, but we do not just copy it. And that would, we've seen with customers, it would be very demanding to come up with data lifecycle management, etc. So it would create a larger footprint. That was a very long answer to a short.
One more question from Brigitta. How typical it is for customers to set up event monitoring even in non-productive systems? I am just thinking how to avoid.
So I think it's a brilliant question. We get to see that question so often. Honestly, if we would not be involved, not many customers would do it. We always recommend just do it, because it does not come with effort. It does hardly come with any cost. Just activate the play button, make sure that the monitoring runs. Even if you're not looking at it, it doesn't matter, because we even have customers that even don't have the bandwidth or the power or the resources to go through all of these security events. But if something goes wrong, you still have your monitor to go back into helping you to explain what really happened. And so you can also use it to answer auditing questions. It does not mean that you need to actively, create incidents out of alerts, etc. And if you will not be monitoring your non-production, the example that Joris showed, the lateral movement, would not be visible or would be very difficult to spot it. So answer very short is, please always activate it. It's only a button click away.
I'll just throw one additional line of answer. What I've seen in my customers is that the production data get copied into the non-production system for,
Correct.
let's say, business testing purposes, right? And then, as we all know, the non-production security is not top-notch, right? And that's how the fight begins between the security and the functional consultant. Now, so it is depending on the scenario how the non-production data is handled, like copied production data and the security. It makes more sense to have the non-production connected to the security bridge tools for monitoring purposes at least. And SAP all in a production and SAP all in a non-production like this in this scenario is the same.
Yep, absolutely true.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ivan. Can I ask you to stop sharing, and then I can? Yes. All right. Thanks. I want to. I would like to say thank you to all speakers, and also thanks to all attendees for the interest. We will make sure to follow up on the questions and sharing the recording and the materials. Many thanks, and see you in the next webinar.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.